316 of the CRICKETher Weekly. It's official, Sid. The English cricket season has started.
Yeah, we drove to the Hampshire Bowl yesterday. We drove through some rain on the way there and we were like, oh God, here we go. Summer's over already, but there was no interruptions at all. We got a full day's play.
We did.
And all the other games finished. There was a brief delay in Durham, I believe. There was like 4 overs in Durham, but otherwise, yeah, it was not a bad day for cricket.
Yeah, we had some sunshine even over in Hampshire. And actually quite an exciting game in the end because it came down to the final over. Ultimately, Hampshire got across the line against Essex with, I think it was 2 balls to spare in the end. It was Naomi Datani who hit the winning runs. But as you wrote in your report, Sid, actually there were 4 young batters who had particularly exciting performances. So for Essex, Jodie Grucock hit 80. And then for Hampshire, Abby Norgrove hit 85 and Ella McCacken hit 90. They shared quite a big partnership together that really kind of brought Hampshire not quite within touching distance.
Yeah, they still needed a 7 and over at that point. But they needed someone to come in and then kind of accelerate a bit. And Freya Kemp's the one that did that.
She did, yeah. So she, coming in at number 4, hit 46, a decent whack, and did get out right before the end, leaving Naomi Datani to finish the job. So it was quite a team effort from Hampshire, but actually 4 young batters, and you were positive, Sid.
Yeah, I was. Interestingly, I was like, when I was watching it, I was very frustrated by actually a lot of those performances because they were sort of daddy 50s and you felt that 100 was there. I mean, this was not a day for great bowling, it has to be said. The pick of the bowlers on the day was Amanda Jade Wellington and she looked like a woman that had got off a plane a week ago because she had got off a plane a week ago.
Also recently had surgery as well, but anyway.
So, the bowling wasn't great. And no one quite, there wasn't a feeling that people were dominating particularly, but you did definitely feel that there were hundreds for the taking that none of those 3 batters that got the bigger scores did take. So at the time I left the ground, I was like, I was quite frustrated no one got to that 100. But then by the time I got home and started writing my report, I was actually, 3 scores of 80 odd, that's pretty decent. And we've got 4 batters, the oldest of which is Ella Mack, who's 23. The other sort of 21, 22, and that's good stuff. And we talk a lot about the bowling that England have got coming up, but there are some good batters there, and they're putting in solid performances. And I hope that Lottie is noticing. Charlotte Edwards was there yesterday. She was apparently hiding in the pavilion, probably under one of her hoodies, as she kind of wants to. She likes to go a little bit under the radar when she comes to kind of watch the county games.
She actually wants to concentrate and focus on the cricket rather than have people like us chew her ear off.
But if she is there, I hope that she's kind of seeing those performances from people like Ella McCacken because, she'll be looking at Maya Boucher and going, contracted England player, but actually the standout, Hampshire opener yesterday was Ella McCacken and Maya Boucher was disappointing again. It took her, about all of 20 minutes before she lost concentration and played a shot that, and you could just see Maya just like play that shot. She played a little push and got caught on the ring and she was just like, why do I do that thing that I always do? And it's like, well, yeah, because she does always do it, unfortunately. And other players showed that they could concentrate and, carry on and build those slightly bigger innings.
Yeah.
And I think that was positive.
You haven't mentioned Grace Scrivens, talking of people who unfortunately get out.
Yeah, I think we need to move on to the next topic now, Raf. Yeah, move on to the next game, please.
Grace Scrivens unfortunately got a
Move on to the next game. Thank you.
Well, no, I just wanted to pick up your point because we have been quite critical about and quite kind of worried about where the next generation of batters is coming from, right? And when we talked about the series in South Africa, there was, we were quite concerned about the batting. Now, there's a couple of interesting things here. Based on that Hampshire v Essex game yesterday, one of which is that 3 of those batters that we're talking about didn't play in South Africa. 2 of them weren't there, so Norgrove and McCacken weren't there, and Jodie Grucock was there but didn't play other than fielding for Heather Knight on occasion, but she didn't bat. So that's kind of interesting that we've actually have got this other group of players who weren't even in that 30, who are considered the best 30. Now it's possible that actually maybe we've got a better pipeline of players for 50 over cricket than we have for 20 over cricket, because presumably that 30 was selected because it's ahead of the T20 World Cup with very much a 20 over focus. I think players like McCacken particularly, of those three that I've just talked about, are really cast more in the 50 over mould than the 20 over mould as it stands. And it'll be really interesting to see in the ODIs against Ireland in September, which really feels like a moment of kind of, Lottie talked at the end of the 50 over World Cup last November, basically saying, well, it's a new cycle now, it's a new World Cup cycle, we've really got to bring up the next generation. So are we going to see those three
are we going to see the 50 over players selected, or are we going to see the glamour players selected? Because of course the name everyone's going to be talking about is going to be Davina Perrin in particular, who I don't think now is going to play in the World Cup. I don't think she's going to play in the internationals before the World Cup, not unless there's 2 or 3 injuries. I think there'll be pressure on Lottie to select players like Dav Perrin, but maybe there are other players that are better suited to playing ODI cricket.
Yeah.
Maybe if you're looking for an opener in that Ireland series, you should be looking at Ella Mack and not at Dav Perrin, because it's 50 over cricket.
Yeah, because England are only playing ODIs against Ireland to fulfil their championship requirements. They're not playing any T20s. We did have a comment yesterday from Hugh on YouTube saying, surely someone needs their head examined regarding long-term planning if Jodie Grewcock doesn't slot in at 4 or 5 in the ODIs against New Zealand, which are in May. Now, I see what he's saying, but I also think that at that point, even though it's ODIs, Lottie's going to want to be gathering her World Cup squad together. And at that point, it's probably not the right time for somebody like a Grewcock to come in as a sort of outsider to that, really. Because she's not going to play in the World Cup.
I'll be very surprised if there's any left field selections in those ODIs, to be honest. I think it will be the Ireland thing, not be the moment.
I mean, it's an open question as well, the extent to which Charlotte Edwards is actually taking these one-day cup matches into account when she selects her World Cup 15. Now, our understanding is that she hasn't finalised her 15 yet. She's still mulling over it. And as you said, Sid, she was there, and she will have very much been across all of the cricket that's happening now. But it is 50 over cricket, not 20 over cricket. So somebody like a Freya Kemp, who we think is probably on the fringes of potentially might be selected, but hasn't cemented her place. Her hitting 46 yesterday won't have done her prospects any harm. Yeah,
and it was quite a quick 46. And so in that sense, I think Freya Kemp probably did her prospects good. And if Freya Kemp and, say, Ella McCacken's innings had been reversed, and if Freya Kemp had been the one that hit 80 off 120 balls, then it would have been a little bit different, I think.
Yeah.
So maybe. But yeah, I'm expecting quite conservative selections for those ODIs in the beginning of the summer, and then hopefully some more kind of a little bit more next gen against Ireland.
Okay, interesting. Let's just run through the other games that we weren't at, but we have kind of caught up a little bit via the live streams. So Lancashire, top of the table, having beaten Durham by 149 runs. Gabby Lewis hit what you might refer to as more of a daddy 100, Sid, or a mummy 100, however you want to frame it. So she hit 131.
Yeah, better than a runner ball as well. So, it's a second consecutive century for Lancashire, having, of course, hit a century in the final at the Hampshire Bowl the end of last year.
Yeah, just with several months in between times. Lancashire top of the table based on such a big win. Obviously, slight concern in terms of what happens when Gabby Lewis goes walkabout and disappears for Ireland in June.
They've got Maid Lanning then, so...
Oh, that's true, I suppose. There was a good report from Richard Starkey, who was actually there, suggesting that Lancashire,
he was very impressed by Lancashire, wasn't he? That's the one game I've paid. I haven't watched any of the live stream of that game, so I'm relying entirely on Richard to have said that Lancs looked pretty good.
Okay.
So
apparently it was very cold in Durham as well. Now at Edgbaston, Surrey beat Warwickshire. Now Surrey looked to be on course for a very big win, actually, because they absolutely smashed it. They hit 389, which is the highest score in the history of this rather we only had one season of this competition.
It's the highest score in all of the
regional era. Yeah. So that kind of puts it into perspective. Danny Wyatt-Hodge scored 100, but also a good innings from Jemima Spence, 79, to really take them up near that 400 mark.
Yeah, Jemima Spence was one of your ones to watch in the Wisden Cricket Monthly this week, in your column in Wisden Cricket Monthly, wasn't she?
Yeah.
So yeah, a young player from Surrey that you know, Surrey have been talking up, and she came in and did a good job yesterday. It has to be said about this game. So this is a game I watched a substantial bit of the live stream this morning, and there was a very short boundary on one side. So there were an awful lot of sixes hit over that very short boundary.
Particularly by Em Arlott, who in Warwickshire's reply ended up hitting 90. And I think she hit 7 sixes and they were all over cow.
Yeah, well, one of them was a little bit more towards square leg, but basically, yes. I mean, Danny Wyatt was hitting sixes both sides of the wicket, but almost all Danny Wyatt's sixes. It's a little bit difficult to tell from the stream because obviously there are only a couple of cameras on their stream, but it looked like pretty much all of them were over that short. But I mean, the short boundary was very short indeed, like, you know, possibly under 50 metres at points. So yeah, but you know, you still got to go out there and score those runs. And, you know, Surrey definitely put themselves into a really positive position, but possibly some negatives for Surrey in terms of the fact that although Warwickshire never looked like shape, they were so fast, so early behind the rate that they never looked like they were going to win the game. But, you know, as you said, Emma was able to sort of go out and play some beach cricket, if you like.
I mean, they only lost by 50 runs, and Surrey's bowlers really struggled to finish it off, even though, as you say, it was kind of... basically the entire way through the Warwickshire innings, they just didn't have a chance of getting the runs. But on the other hand, you know, we talked up Surrey, and Surrey are second to Lancashire now in the table, and will be, you know, you could say very pleased with the day's work. But actually, if they're going to come up against other teams who are, you know, maybe a bit stronger, then they might struggle if they haven't got the bowling to back up what their batters are doing.
Yeah, which was a little bit their problem last year as well.
Yeah.
They had a load of big scores last year and then couldn't defend them. So
yeah, and then the fourth match, of course, which in some ways was the most exciting one, which we actually watched the end
watching it on the live stream
because so it was Somerset v Yorkshire at Taunton. So Yorkshire's first outing in Tier 1. And Yorkshire were all out for 178, but Somerset then contrived to almost make a mess of what should have been really a relatively straightforward chase. They ended up winning by just 1 wicket, with Sophie Luff having to kind of really marshal numbers 9 and 10. So they were 115 for 8, and at that point Yorkshire would have been very hopeful, and then Luff just dragged them over the line. Admittedly, she was also dropped twice in the last few overs. Even off what proved to be the last ball, there was a course and bold chance, and she was dropped. And I think Yorkshire will be.
Chance ever. She did hit it straight back to the bowler, and it wasn't hit that hard. It was Sophie Luff. She's not. I mean, she's hit harder than I can, but
she doesn't hit it.
She's not
like
a power
Freya
hitter.
Kemp does,
it really should.
And I think that actually. Yeah, so I guess overall, obviously, Yorkshire will go away disappointed, but Somerset shouldn't be too happy either. It wasn't a great cricket match.
Yeah,
one would say.
What's
like,
the female equivalent of 2 bald men fighting over a comb?
I mean, you're looking at, you know, on the one hand, you're looking at Surrey at one end of Tier 1 who are scoring almost 400, and then you're looking at kind of the other end of the table where you've really got a situation now where we've progressed into now, we've got a 9-team Tier 1 and we're going to have a 10-team Tier 1 next year. So we're bringing all of these players into being professionals who have previously would have just been on kind of development contracts, and we're maybe kind of thrusting them into things quite quickly.
We're starting to stretch things very thin at that end, and it's just like, if you know, from Yorkshire's perspective, if they're struggling to beat Somerset, which obviously they are because they didn't beat them, then that's not great. And from Somerset's perspective, if they're struggling to beat, I mean, bear in mind that Yorkshire lost nearly half their group games last year in the One Day Cup in Div 2, Tier 2. So, you know, we weren't expecting Yorkshire to be very strong either, and Somerset nearly stuffed it up. So yeah, I'm not sure it's looking too good for them at that end of the table. It does really feel like they'll be the two sides at that end of the table, because Essex did actually look. We worried about Essex early doors yesterday, but they did ultimately look like a side that actually are going to be solidly mid-table.
They really competed, yeah. It's an interesting.
What are we going to see when Surrey come up against Yorkshire, and it's going to be carnage?
Well, we're hoping to get to Surrey Durham next weekend, so that'll be an interesting one to see as well, because obviously Durham struggled against Lancs. Anyway, so that's a little bit of a roundup, and it's just really nice that the season's underway again. Now, much further away, Sid, Cricket Australia have announced their list of centrally contracted women players for the forthcoming year. The headlines are that Lucy Hamilton and Chloe Ainsworth have been awarded contracts for the first time. Nicola Carey is back on the list of centrally contracted players. On the other side of the equation, Taylor Vlemick, despite having recently made a comeback and is obviously looking to really kind of get back into the swing of things, she has been dropped. And so has Tess Flintoff, who we might consider to be a little bit unlucky, given that she basically was added to the contracted list of players and then didn't really get any opportunities and now has been discarded again. But let's think about kind of, because the fact that Lucy Hamilton and Chloe Ainsworth have sort of displaced Taylor Vlemick, and they're both quick bowlers.
Yeah, Australia's still, kind of stumbling around in the dark, looking for the right fast bowling combination. It's a bit like Taylor Swift's love life in her 20s, isn't it? Sorry, Ty, but it is.
She's just trying to find the one. Australia, they're just trying to find the one.
And there's still, you've got to feel a little bit sorry for Taylor Vlemick, and she's going to be wondering what's going on. Maybe she hasn't done anything wrong. She hasn't played at all, but it's like, well, they kept her on for 2 years while she was injured.
Yeah.
And then now she's coming back, and they're going,
no. And they've gone, no. Yeah. Yeah, it's slightly odd timing, isn't it? And so, anyway, we don't really have any particular insight into what's gone on behind the scenes, other than that Sean Flegler has said, basically, Taylor is very much still kind of,
she's very much in our thoughts, but not that much in our thoughts.
Now, alongside this announcement, actually, some canny journalists used this announcement of contracts as an opportunity to quiz Sean Flegler about the Sophie Molineux captaincy. Now, Sid, I'm going to read you some of Sean Flegler's quotes, and you can just react in real time, okay? Right. So
I've never heard these before. Okay, I have. But...
Okay, so Sophie Molineux getting the captaincy, he says it's probably a fair point to say it's unprecedented. We're comfortable internally that it was the right decision for this group at this time.
Right.
I totally get that it might seem a bit odd from the outside.
Okay. It does.
We're happy to be judged on it down the track. Not now, but down the track. Well, we're judging him now, Sid.
That's true.
If it turns out that Soph is injured again long term, we'll have to reassess where we go with the captaincy.
So we're 100% confident that we've made the right decision, but we might have to reassess that decision if it turns out that we haven't made the right decision.
I think this is really interesting. I think these quotes are fascinating because there's obviously been such a reaction, and not just us, because I would think we're fairly. I think Sean Flegler's probably.
I don't think Sean Flegler's logging onto the CRICKETher Weekly.
I think he's probably got bigger fish to fry than the CRICKETher Weekly. But there's clearly been such a reaction amongst people who matter, and amongst the Australian public, who are kind of a stakeholder in this, right? That he's actually feeling that he has to actively justify the decision and almost acknowledge the reaction. So saying, I totally get that it might seem a bit odd from the outside. So he's acknowledging that. And normally people, when these decisions are questioned, they feel able just to kind of plough on regardless and not really acknowledge any opposition. That's certainly been the ECB's position on a number of things that we've taken issue with over the last couple of years. So interesting that he's actually acknowledged it, but also to admit at this point that they may have to reassess.
We definitely haven't made a mistake, but we
It's
might have
really-
made a mistake, and if we have, then we'll go back on it.
It's really mixed signals, and I've got to say, if I was Sophie Molineux hearing this, then I'd feel a little bit uncomfortable actually, because he's kind of saying, oh, basically, we're not actually really sure.
We like you, Soph, but we might still throw you under the bus.
Yeah.
If you're not careful.
Yeah, exactly.
Get well soon.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, get well soon. But if your injury ends up being a bit worse than we thought, then bye bye type thing. So, some absolutely fascinating insights there into I guess the slightly chaotic approach to captaincy in Australia at the moment.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to add, Sid?
Yeah. That says it all, really.
That's it. Okay, all right. Thanks for that. Okay. Now, finally, this week, there's been, it's been a week of books.
A week of books.
Hasn't it?
We have books.
Wow. Have we just spent all of our money on books?
Yeah, we kind of have.
Okay. So
we actually bought all these as well. We didn't get gifted any of them.
We did. So we don't have to add anything into the video description. There's #gifted. They were not gifted. First of all, I was lucky enough to go to the Cricket Society MCC Book of the Year dinner in the Long Room this week. So they had 6 shortlisted authors, and then they announced the winner. But one of I will just tell you a little anecdote, Sid, and share with our viewers / listeners. So one of the shortlisted books was Tim Wigmore, Test Cricket, A History.
So Tim Wigmore, a young journalist who lives just up the road from us, lives a couple of miles up in that direction.
Thanks for that,
Hi
Sid.
Tim, I'm sure you log on to the CRICKETher weekly every...
Of course he does. Writes for the Telegraph. So he had this book shortlisted, and all of the shortlisted authors get to go up to the stage and say a little bit about their book, and they get asked some questions by one of the judges. And so he did his little speech about the book, and then he was asked a question, basically, what do you think is the future of Test cricket? Because obviously the future of both men's and women's Test cricket is kind of in some, there's a question mark hanging over it. And he said, well, I think that Test cricket is absolutely thriving, and of course we're here at Lord's and people will be really excited because this summer we've got 2 tests here. And I just instinctively, it's like a tick, I can't help it, Sid. I just said really loudly, 3 tests! Because obviously he'd forgotten about the women's test, which I'm really excited about. It's happening, England v India, first women's test at Lord's in July. And then I went, and then obviously I said it, because it's a bit of a tick, I said it like really loudly. And so the whole room heard, and so it basically was a heckle. And then I went bright red, and I was like, oh dear, possibly shouldn't have done that, because he's an author, and maybe I interrupted his moment. Unfortunately, everyone on my table was like, well done, Raf, well done. And Dean Wilson, who's just become the new media manager for the England women's cricket team, leaned across and fist bumped me. It was like, well done, Raf. Anyway, that's by the by. There were a couple of interesting books that we just wanted to touch on. Shall we talk about the winner first?
The winner, yes.
This isn't a women's cricket book, by the way, but it is a really good book. It is Richard Whitehead, Victory in Australia, and it's about England winning in 1954-55, the England men's team.
Yeah, now the only issue I have with this, it says the remarkable story of England's greatest Ashes triumph. And that's just, it's so male, so they're completely ignoring John Lewis and Heather Knight's triumph in 2023 when they came back to tie the series and to not take home the urn or whatever the stumps.
Maybe you should write a book about. A book about that.
So
England's greatest triumph.
The greatest triumph, except for John Lewis and Heather Knight in 2023.
Inspire and entertain.
Yeah.
You could call it Inspire and Entertain.
So,
thanks
seriously,
for that, Sid.
It is a really well written book. If you've got a men's cricket fan in your life that you want to give a present to, then that's definitely one that should be up on the list.
And the other one this is actually by an Australian author called Max Bonnell. About a cricketer called Father Marriott, who was a leg spinner. Now, I bought this book. Why did I buy this book, Sid?
Well, this has got nothing really to do with women's cricket.
It's not really.
But
feel free to turn off if you.
Here's a rare thing that this book about a cricketer that played in the 1930s has an entire chapter on my great-grandfather. So my great-grandfather, who was a guy called Edmund Blunden, that was a writer in the 1920s, 30s, 40s. He wrote stuff during the Great War. He wrote a book about the Great War called Undertones of War, which if you did English A-level, you might have come across. And he was friends with Marriott, and there's an entire chapter about my great-grandfather in it. So I read that with some interest.
Cool. Do you think he's only in relation to Gemma Marriott?
I doubt it.
Okay.
But maybe.
I'm just trying to find a women's cricket connection in there somewhere, Sid. Now, also this week, we both went to the launch of a very special book, What Cricket Means to Me.
Yeah, I think we were invited by Jill Smith, who's a former England player.
Yes, she is. And basically her and Neil Brinsden, the other author. So Neil is a photographer. So it's got some lovely photographs in. It's basically stories of kind of people who basically, Jill and Neil went round and said, what does cricket mean to you? And it's people's responses to that. And it's got their words and their photographs. It was a really nice event, wasn't it, Sid?
Yeah, so there were lots of people at this event. There were some famous people, like David Gower was there, and who's the guy that does the stats on TMS?
Andy Zaltzman.
He was there, yes. There were a few ex-England players, actually a very ex-England player. What we reckon is the oldest current living Test cricketer.
English Test cricketer, yeah. So Anne Savoury, her maiden name was Anne Sanders. That's what you'll find her stats under. She first represented England in 1954, but she was born in 1931. So she's 95 years old. So even though Wikipedia and Google will tell you differently, she is the oldest living English Test cricketer.
She is a tad older than Mickey Stewart.
Year older. Yeah.
So
that was really nice to see her.
Yeah, and so Raf was able to have a little chat with her. But we heard some of these stories, and I just wanted to talk about one in particular because a lady called Leora Hampton stood up, who talked about her story, and her story is here in this book, and you can read it if you take the book. But I want to talk about how I responded to her story, because her story is very much about how her love of cricket came about and what she wants to do with her life. She's a young lady, so she's got her life ahead of her, and she wants to go into cricket. But she's not one of those ones that's dreaming of earning £1 million in the WPL. What she's dreaming of is becoming a coach and giving back to other kids the start that she had through cricket, the fact that cricket really gave her something to latch onto at a point in her life where she was finding things difficult, and she said she didn't have many friends at school, and cricket gave her a home, and she wants to go into coaching so that she can give other people a home. And it's so easy to forget, I think, that after the journey that we've all been on in women's cricket over the past 15 years, which has taken us from small club grounds to right to literally the biggest stadiums in the world, and sometimes you kind of forget that there is this other side of cricket, and that there is a lot of people out there that for whom cricket is a passion and a love, and even people that are employed in cricket, many of them aren't making huge amounts of money, but they're doing it because they love the game and they want to kind of pass the game on to the next generation. And it's not all about who's made £200,000 from the 100, who's getting paid $300,000 in the WPL. There's another side of it it is important not to forget, and that that there is a cricket family out there, and that those things are to be cherished.
Absolutely. So if those messages resonate with you, then do buy the book. We should also say that all of the proceeds are going to charity. They're going to the Cricketers Trust, which is an organisation that helps cricketers who are in difficulty. So they do a lot of work, for example, with cricketers who are struggling with their mental health, and former cricketers who are struggling with their mental health. It's available to buy, and we really, really recommend it.
Absolutely.
Okay, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you in a week's time. Bye for now.
Bye.